welcome to a special edition of VLGA Connect. In conversation today with the Commissioner for Better Regulation in Victoria, Anna Cronin. Anna, lovely to have you on the program. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's great to be here.
You've been appointed the chair of a state government expert panel that's undertaking a comprehensive review of Victoria's building system. Promises to be comprehensive, make recommendations for more, I read, efficient, responsive and contemporary building legislation. This is a pretty big task in front of you.
It sure is. This review comes out of the cladding task force. I'm sure you and your members will recall the pretty horrific demonstration that we saw a few years ago in terms of regulatory failure, in terms of the cladding crisis in Victoria. And that was really symptomatic that our building legislative and regulatory systems hadn't kept up with changes in the whole nature of construction and how it's done these days. And so the cladding task force not only made recommendations in terms of immediate rectification of the cladding issue and immediately addressing it, and that enabled or facilitated the establishment of Cladding Safety Victoria, which is already underway. But the Cladding Task Force importantly made a very significant recommendation to Minister Wynne and the government that a comprehensive review of the whole building system take place. And as you and your members would know, particularly the municipal building surveyors, the Building Act was actually first enacted in 1993. It has since been amended many, many times, and there's regulations that sit underneath it that have also been amended. But essentially, it is an old piece of legislation that's been added to. It is clunky. It is out of date. And in my view and the panel's view, it has represented, it is timely now to change that, to look at it. And what the Minister has said to us is to do a root and branch review, not only of the legislative and regulatory structures, but also the roles and responsibilities of the players within that area, and also the regulators themselves.
The description you've just given is a bit like what we were saying about the Local Government Act a few years ago before that was really overhauled. So is it a similar process? Do you know, like it's obviously wide-ranging. What sort of a process are you putting in place to make sure you pick up on all the elements?
So the terms of reference are up on our website, Chris, Better Regulation Victoria, and I'd certainly encourage your members to have a look at them. They first of all asked for the Minister asked for some early initiatives, what could be done pretty quickly to try and fix the system. And so the panel made 6 recommendations along those lines, which are included in our discussion paper. They're mainly focused on improving the consumer experience, improving the training opportunities for building surveyors and for building practitioners, and laying the groundwork for some insurance changes. The panel has also agreed to a staged approach to reform. So we've set our reform program into 3 stages. Our discussion paper, which went out a couple of months ago now and is on the Engage Victoria website and on our website as well, it is focused on stage 1. And the stage 1 reforms, Chris, are to do with improving accountability across the whole construction spectrum, increasing oversight, particularly with high risk buildings, and putting consumers central to the whole system. Those are the 3 main things that the panel's been asked to do. And I should note too that my panel members, my panel colleagues, I'm incredibly lucky to have the people I have involved. So we have Dame Judith Hackett from the UK, who led the UK government's inquiry post Grenfell Tower, post that tragedy. We have Lauren Solomon, the CEO of the Consumer Policy Research Centre, Jerry Ayres, who's the Health and Safety Policy Advisor at the CFMEU. We also have Professor Ian Bailey from Sydney, who is a former architect and a construction lawyer. And we have Melanie Fashion from the Master Builders of Victoria. And look, it's a terrific group. I'm really blessed to have such a good panel to work with. I've got a small panel secretariat led by Mark Keeley with Sean Cleary, who's with me today on it as well. And so we work to support the panel. They work to support the panel. And at the moment, we're in the process of the consultation on the stage 1 elements of the reform package.
Right. So I'm assuming Dame Judith Hackett is participating via video conference, or is she coming out?
That's the only way we can do it. And it means that our meetings, Chris, happen either at what one might call sparrow fart or late in the evening. So we sort of we have to accommodate her that way. Yes. But I can assure you it's worth it. But we do keep an eye on the time zone changes. It's they're pretty important to recognise.
Yes, I can imagine. So the panel's got really good industry representation, a lot of experience. How do you see local government's interests being represented?
Okay. So look, it's very important that we engage with local councils, and we have, and we are. And we've been, ever since we kicked off this process, the panel first met in February 2020, right? So we actually had a face-to-face meeting, which was terrific, except for Dame Judith. And then ever since then, we've met by video conference. On top of the panel meetings, we have a whole series of stakeholders that we've been having bilateral meetings with as we've gone along, and I can assure you that the Municipal Association of Victoria is heavily involved, particularly through Emlyn and his work, and we're also talking closely with the ASU, the Australian Services Union, and probably more regularly, one of our most regular stakeholders that we consult with is the VMBSG, who do a terrific job of representing the interests of your members in terms of local council issues, in terms of that very important role of municipal building surveyors. So I think it's fair to say that Peter Jolly and Stephen Baxis and the panel and the Secretariat, we've become very familiar to each other over the last year or so. And I really couldn't praise more highly their participation and their representation of you and the local government sector. I think it's been excellent.
That's terrific. For individual councils that might have views that differ slightly from the aggregated views, are they going to have the opportunity to put their views into the process?
Well, look, I mean, we can't, there's 79 councils in Victoria and we can't go to all of them. We are very aware of some of the particular issues that rural and regional councils have. Yes. I mean, you'd have to be asleep not to be aware of the particular challenges that they face. And I don't need to tell you this, Chris, in terms of being able to have municipal building surveyors. I mean, there are some councils that we're aware of that don't. Correct. Our consultation process is very open, and I would encourage all of you to, drop us an email. The contact details are all there on Engage Victoria's website. We're happy to hear from you. Our official date of receiving sort of written submissions, I think, is coming up, but we're quite flexible. And so if over the next week or so, people want to drop us a line or make a phone call, by all means, feel free to do so. But look, as always, with representative organisations, and this is, the whole point of VLGA as well, as you well know, is, from our point of view, it's difficult for us to talk to each and every of the 79 councils, and we do rely on going to sort of subgroups to get different views.
Of course.
But I would also make it very clear that we see consultation as a continual process. We've been doing it. We're a very open and inclusive bunch, so, we're delighted to talk to people, and if councils would like us to come and present to them about the work that we're doing at any time, I'm happy to do that. And maybe share that workload with my fellow panel members if possible. But yes, it's a pretty inclusive process.
Now, the review discussion paper that you've released, I think it was back in April, there's a lot of reading in that paper. There's some preferred models that have been outlined that have come from some of the peak bodies. Are these the only options on the table, or are you looking at other possible permutations along the way?
No, look, they're not at all. I mean, the key thing we're trying to do in the context of the building surveyor situation, looking at the cladding task force review, looking at the building confidence report that Shergold Weir did as well. Those are two crucial and seminal reports that have happened in the last, 5 or 6 years in terms of building reform in Australia. And in the Victorian context, we do have quite a unique situation with the statutory role of private building surveyors. We also have thresholds in terms of risk management, which are at 3 stories, okay? So above 3 stories, you need a different type of building surveyor, a building surveyor unlimited. Below 3 stories, you have a building surveyor limited. We think that's out of date. I mean, the panel has a general view that we should be aligning risk. So the more risky a building is, the greater oversight you might have on that.
Yeah.
Now, over the last year, we've worked with the Australian Institute of Building Surveyors, we've worked with the Victorian Municipal Building Surveyors Group, and we've worked with the Municipal Association of Victoria. And we've said to each of them, you guys come up with your preferred model, right? And we will explain it faithfully as much as we can. And we checked it all with them, so I think we did, in the report, so that we can put out those models and say, look, you know, some very considered stakeholders have given us some very thoughtful and sensible approaches that come out of all of their experience. We've also put into the paper a possible hybrid model where we've picked out some of the bits of the other models, and the panel's sort of quite interested in exploring that further. And we put that out for consultation. And since we've done that, Chris, we've had regular meetings with VMBSG and the ABES people and the MAV because we're tinkering about with it. And in fact, this very afternoon, we've got a meeting of only those groups, right? The specialist building surveyor people to see whether we can try and get some broader agreement across those different models. So I think the panel's very open-minded about this. We want to hear from the experts. We want to hear from VMBSG and ABES and the other groups and MAV and so on. We want to understand the implications of expecting greater oversight of buildings, which I think, given the regulatory failure, is a natural expectation of government and the community. So we're very open-minded. And look, I'm so pleased that each of those groups made such an effort to give us such a professional, well thought through framework. And it's really been terrific for the panel because we're dealing with smart people who know their stuff, and we're able to sort of build on, to sort of drag out of them those experiences.
So it sounds like a very thorough process, which is great to hear. I think most councils, if not all, are welcoming this because it is, as you say, for a lot of reasons, overdue. The sting in the tail sometimes is, what's going to come out at the other end? Will it have resourcing implications for councils? What sort of checks and balances are you able to bring into the process to ensure that it doesn't have those unintended consequences, perhaps, at the other end?
Well, look, I mean, to the extent that the panel makes recommendations that involve a greater role for municipal building surveyors, there is going to be an impact on council resourcing. Let's not ignore that, and let's not shy away from that. There is also a stream of revenue that comes into the system through the building permit levy, okay? So our priority as a panel is to try and get the regulatory framework right, okay? To get the increased accountability and to get the increased oversight for higher risk buildings. The data in this area, unfortunately, Chris, is pretty poor. And it's pretty difficult to get an overall view of Victoria and where the risks are and so on. But one statistic that really stuck in my mind was the ABCB at the Building Surveyors Conference that the VBA held in February. One of their senior representatives made this comment and said, in 2019, I think it was, there were $2.5 billion worth of major building defects in Australia, right? 2.5 billion. And of that, 1.5 billion was class 2 buildings. Now that's apartment buildings. That's mid to high rise apartment buildings. Now, we all know, if you look around metropolitan Melbourne, that probably, again, when the Building Act was first introduced in 1993, we didn't see apartment buildings in the suburbs that were higher than 3 stories. You know, you'll recall the old 6-pack apartment buildings that you still see around the place. But since then, planning changes have meant that we've seen a densification of population. And now in suburbs, you're seeing apartment blocks going up to 6, 7, 8 stories. And so as height goes up, risk goes up. And so that's why we think we need a much better aligned system involving more oversight, including from municipal building surveyors, as buildings get riskier, okay? I mean, I don't think the community and the government would think it's acceptable that a building surveyor who essentially does most of his or her work on single-storey dwellings in Keysborough, say, can come into the CBD and do building surveyor work on a 47-floor building. You know, it doesn't sort of make sense, does it? I mean, we really do need to align that risk. And so, coming back to your question about resourcing, we're not shying away from that, and we are aware that there will be resourcing implications. We're aware that councils are cash-strapped and so on as well. We're also aware that there is a building stream of revenue that comes from building permit levies. To the extent that there is further demand on municipal building surveyors, there will need to be some recompense from that. I mean, you know, no one's shying away from that. But the panel's priority is to get those regulatory settings right.
Excellent. That's really clear. Thank you very much. Timing wise, this is a long process. I think I read you're thinking 3 years from start to finish, which is obviously why the minister wanted some early sort of wins. Can you just very quickly, before we wrap up, walk through the stages and the timing as you see it?
So we did the early initiatives last year and submitted those, and they've been agreed to by the minister. So stage 1 is addressing the priority areas that the panel has set out, and that's to do with the things I talked about before: accountability, oversight, putting consumers first. Our focus in stage 1 is on 4 things: practitioner registration and regulation, the roles and responsibilities of building surveyors, including municipal building surveyors, regulator roles and structures, and consumer representation. So those are our priority areas. We're consulting on those issues now. We'll be making recommendations to the minister mid-year, so probably in June, July, sometime around there. He's very keen to make implementation happen as fast as possible, because he knows these are really important issues to restore faith in the building system and quality and safety of buildings, which is what this is all about. Once we've submitted those recommendations to Minister Wynne, we will then embark on our consultation with stakeholders on stage 2. And that involves looking at some of the other recommendations from the Cladding Task Force, including the consideration of a general duty of care, right? This is analogous a bit to the new EPA arrangements, which some of your members will be aware of. We're also looking at the role of modern building system information. You know, we should be able to really use building intelligence a hell of a lot better than we do now in terms of regulatory requirements and in terms of safety, really importantly. We're also looking at the role of additional mandatory inspections in the process, and that will be part of stage 2. So stage 2 will start pretty quickly. There's a lot of concurrence going on here, so we'll be doing more. You know, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, so that's good. And then finally, during next year, the panel and I and our colleagues at the department and my secretariat will continue our work with stakeholders to develop a new Building Act. So some of the things we're talking about right now will involve amendments to the current Act, because we want to get it done quickly. But ultimately, the minister wants a new Building Act, a new modern Building Act that meets the community's expectations for safe buildings and quality buildings, is aligned with the national framework, and is a new piece of legislation and regulatory framework that basically will lay the groundwork, Chris, for the future of the construction industry for the next 20 or 30 years. And then other people can come along and have conversations like this and do it all again.
That sounds terrific. And look, as you work through those stages, open invitation to come and talk with us about where you're at on the program.
Okay.
The Commission for Better Regulation, this is not all you're doing, is it? You've got other projects on the go?
Well, we made recommendations on planning reform at the end of 2019, and I'm delighted to say that they were all funded in the budget in November last year. So these are things about reducing the time taken to get planning permits. There's a lot of support coming out of that program for local councils to improve their own processes, including the application of the Better Approvals Framework for local councils in planning. Many councils have gone through the Better Approvals Framework for their small business licences. It really worked very well. The feedback we got from councils across Victoria was very, very positive. So we thought, well, when you're on a good framework, stick to it. So we thought we'd apply a similar type of approach to the planning system for local councils. So we've done that. We recommended that. So that will be being rolled out very soon. But Chris, there's a lot in this planning reform. So my suggestion is there'll be further announcements in the budget in the next couple of days. So maybe what we should do is come back and have another talk with you about that planning reform, that set of planning reforms and what it means for councils.
That would be terrific. I'll hold you to that. Thank you very much for all of that on the building system review, and best of luck with the work. You've got a huge job ahead of you, but well underway by the sounds of it, and we do appreciate your time.
No, look, Chris, it's great to talk to you, and I'm very happy to be a participant with your VLGA Connect. You know, when we've got good things to tell you in terms of informing local councils, and I hope this will be the first of many of our talks.
Thanks very much. All the best, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I've been speaking with Anna Cronin, the Better Regulation Commissioner, who is heading up the expert panel reviewing the building system in Victoria. Now, there's a lot of information available about this process. You'll find it all at vic.gov.au/building-system-review. We'll put the link on the screen and in the show notes. And as you heard, Anna Cronin will come back and keep us informed of the process as it rolls out. That's been a special episode of VLGA Connect in conversation with Anna Cronin. Thank you for your company. We'll see you again soon.